Hey, welcome to the Medical Practice Marketing Podcast. My name is Matt Coffy, and I operate a digital agency that specializes in helping medical practices grow and thrive in this new digital economy. These are real case studies, interviews, successful campaigns, and insights. There's no theory here. This is the real deal. We're making practices lots of profit and getting them lots more patients. So if you're interested, hang on and listen to this episode. You might just learn something interesting. All right, I am so fortunate to have James Schramko on, and he's one of my, I'd say, mentor, a friend, someone I've worked with time and time. Actually, this has been, I think, maybe a fourth year I've been in your membership with your capabilities to help, and we're talking about the Work Less, Make More book, which just came out. And by the way, I won't have you hold it up because I'll hold it up because I have the book. Now,
well done.
Yeah, but there's this other book that's going to be like this medical marketing book that's coming across, which will go out next month from me. So maybe one day we'll do the reverse, right? So really good book. It's very dense, and it really does not have a bit of fluff in it, which I thank you, James, because there's so many people that have, oodles of non-necessarily content that just doesn't make any sense. But yours is dense. And for our audience today, we're kind of talking about a lot of the folks that we market to, which are the medical community. So I wanted to just ask you, there's a lot of success stories in your book. It's really about habit changing. Can you talk a little bit about that, being that you're I would say sort of like an Uber marketing guy. I mean, you're in lots of spaces. There's lots of success stories that you've provided people with. Can you talk a little bit about that and why sort of your book is talking about the habits that really do create different winning strategies?
Well, I think regardless of what market you're in, a lot of the fundamentals won't change. So working with people in different industries, I have everyone from probably Australia's leading plastic surgeon right through to a guy who sells clotheslines online. But the strategies still apply. In most cases, the business will go as well as it can to the extent that the business owner is capable of being available to set that up and then to sustain that business. Most businesses of a substantial merit are going to have more than one person in it. So we go beyond the solopreneur, right, because you can't get to a certain income threshold without a team. And then there's the whole marketing strategy. A lot of businesses are still doing it the hard way. They might sell one-time services where they could perhaps have a recurring business model. They sometimes get paid after they do the work instead of before they do the work. So there are a lot of counterintuitive ideas that I put forward that would help the average business owner, and that will apply to most businesses. And there'll be occasionally a little bit of a caveat. Perhaps someone's in an industry where they have government regulation or they're controlled by a monopoly. But even then, as the business owner or the practitioner, we can still make sure we get appropriate sleep, that we have good routines, that we have an effective way of making decisions as to which projects we should pursue more and which ones we should pursue less. And all of these things are the topics in the book.
Yeah, one of the things I realized in the book, and I was reading it through again for the second time because I'm a double reader, I see a lot of J. Abrahams in there. And I don't know if that just by the fact that you've sort of, that's part of your DNA, that I see like the formula strategy in there where it's like, hey, if you take a piece of service or a piece of something, you multiply it by, X, meaning it might be the cost or profit. And there's always like formulas that, can you talk a little bit about that? Because to me, I think those really set up people to understand how really the small hinges swing big doors. And that's a huge statement because I've learned it myself, and I've tried to teach practitioners, especially in the medical space, that one of the things you can do is really, really look at what you're trying to accomplish by converting the people that are the right people and not chasing down the wrong people, which don't end up to be good sales opportunities for, especially in the medical space. There's so much demand, and you have to be careful because you end up kind of in this space where people want not patients, but they want qualified patients, and it's just the biggest difference if you can get them filtered.
Yeah, so firstly on the Jay Abraham thing, he's definitely been an influence on me. One of the early books that really sort of shook my mind out of the normal sort of progression, and I credit him in the book as well as other people who I drew from. But if you like, over the last 20 years or so, I've been collecting ideas from everyone from Peter Drucker through to Dan Kennedy. Jay Abraham and Gary Halbert are somewhere along the way there. And I do speak to Jay Abraham on the phone sometimes, and he is highly intelligent and has a lot of creativity. And he shared with me some of the notes that he had from his own workshops that he never published, which was very kind. But I will say that I've put my own ideas into this, but I think the profit formula you're talking about is it's not well known by businesses, and it's astounding because it's such a simple formula, and I certainly didn't invent it. But what you're talking about with the small hinges swing big doors, I saw that in a high volume business that I used to run. We were in one business I was running was doing around about $100 million a year in revenue, and the other one was doing about $50 million a year in revenue. And we did small things like when someone came in for to service their Mercedes-Benz, we would offer to replace the batteries in their remote control. And if you add up, if you're seeing 25 vehicles per day, sort of 5 days a week, then that's 100 per week times 52 weeks. Now you start to look at 5,200 potential offers there, and each batteries, I think they were like $10 each. So you can actually add a huge amount of bottom line profit to your business by having one simple system of offering people to upgrade their batteries, or just doing it and putting it in the invoice, which is another way that people used to approach this. So there has to be opportunities, and I know if anyone's ever been to a chiropractor or that type of health practitioner, the good ones will actually have a system where they sit down and do a diagnostic consult, and then they will recommend a schedule of visits that includes quite a lot of frequency. I mean, you pretty much, if you go in there once, they're going to be subscribing you for life to set frequent appointments. They'll continue to set the next appointment. They'll send you alerts to remind you to go to the appointment. Same with the dentist, or here we have skincare clinics because we all get skin cancer. They will chase you up if you don't come in for a while, and this is part of building that frequency of the same customer spending more money with that business over the lifetime of the customer.
Yeah, I have a secondary question for you. I've noticed your happiness has gone up by 10,000% recently. So I'm
Right.
just curious. It seems like it's been like you're one of those guys who's very, you know, almost very logic, to a point where it's like, okay, you're gonna just basically, there's no fluff, it's right to the point. And I've noticed that your level of enthusiasm has changed. And I think there's a couple of reasons, and I just want to ask you a couple questions. I know we're off the beaten path, but I'm just curious. You're smiling a lot, Nora, and I think it's because a lot of this stuff is coming out. That this book is out. There's a lot of I think visibility, and I don't think that needs to be necessarily out there as a thing for you to be happy about. But to me, I think it's the fact that you are actually changing a lot of people's attitudes and lives, and you're sort of seeing it come back. The book is out there. It became a bestseller right away, and I bet you dollars to donuts that I think you're finally striding into the spot where I've always seen you, which is that you are one of those guys who's up around that sort of, again, going back to the habits, like helping people change their their paradigm in their life. And I think that's a critical element. This isn't not about just business anymore. It's about, you've changed to a surfing lifestyle. You've changed into a different family environment. I think the whole thing is positive, and it's really interesting because obviously I've seen it over the last 4 years, and I've been like, wow, like James is like super happy. Like, what is going on? Like, he's like smiling every interview. It's like, and I think it's a different, like, maybe it's just because you're sleeping more, right? And that's part of the book
Look,
too, right?
yeah, it is. I have sort of documented my journey. Thanks for the feedback. Definitely surfing has changed my life. There's no question about that because it does a lot of things. It means if you want to eat, you don't stack on weight. You definitely feel tired at the end of the day, and it's challenging. I think it actually keeps you younger, and could potentially reverse aging. But I'm a long way from when I was going into an office and working long days and then going home and working long nights. So yes, I get better sleep. I have better food. I've got fantastic customers around me who have helped with health and nutrition advice because a lot of the people that I attract, I mean, they're into things like DNA and other sorts of leading edge science that is now being picked up by traditional medical people. And then I did dedicate the book to my kids because I wanted to be able to hand them a book and say, look, here's everything I've learned, and it's kind of a recipe for you to quick start whatever you do in the next phase of your life. And they're at that formative age where it's the right time for them to have a book like this, and I'm getting good response from them. So I think, and the third part of that is just the relief of having to have gone through all the boxes of files and reflect on the experiences that I had all the way through, and to interview some of those customers and to get those case studies. It's tremendously satisfying to know that your stuff actually works, and to be able to sort of, bookend that chapter of my life and say, look, here's my introductory. This is where I've been up to this point, and I really do feel like I'm doing my very best work now. I'm personally coaching somewhere in the region of 500 people concurrently, and my brain is at the best point that it's ever been. I can remember things clearly. I can solve problems quickly, and I'm just feeling in my zone, I guess you'd call it, or in flow.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so this is my kind of parallel, right? So we go and work with health practitioners, and when we go see them, they're in like despair, like they don't have a good patient flow, they don't have like even a plan. In fact, I talked to a practitioner today, and they said, we just can't get our site to come up. And I'm like, well, you could take the no index tag off of your site. That might help to start with. But I mean, it's like that was just if that's a joke for anybody who's in web development. But your strategy and your process and the enthusiasm and all that stuff that you're creating for all these other people, I get it because I see it. And then when we go see practitioners, there is such a hard line in the sand of trying to get them to believe in themselves as even part of the process. That's why I think the habits and the strategy about, why are people afraid? And I almost see like this happening all the time when we finally do work with someone who lets us, put the pedal down and, really do a marketing campaign, like a full campaign. It's enormous, the changes in their attitudes and the smile and but it's hard for us to explain that, even though we could give them logistical and emotional, all the stuff you could put in a big ball and say it's all going to happen, but there's still this level of, I think, anxiety that most people have.
I do think that most of the stuff I'm doing is working on mindset, and it's probably a lot of it revolves around people's capacity to deal with change. There's a lot going on around people at the moment, especially in your country. You have a lot of political turmoil or instability. I'm not sure what you'd call it. It's kind of crazy. It's like a reality TV show playing out every day. You just don't know what's going to happen next, and it takes a lot of attention from people. and we only have a finite amount of energy that we can put to something. And I think when someone comes along making suggestions that is likely to involve financial and an energy investment, they might just be tired. It might be just like, yeah, we'll put that to the side and we'll review it in the next budget or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
Nothing great ever came from just putting something aside. It doesn't work that way. It's like that metaphor in The Go-Giver, a book where he talks about the fire.
Yeah.
Like, you really have to go and chop the timber and put it in the stack and light it before you enjoy the heat. So I talked about in the book about my struggle in the beginning, on the way through to where I'm at now. And there is just that phase where you're going to have to deal with a bit of extra work, a bit of extra energy as you get over the hump. And on the other side of it, though, it's like you have to pinch yourself and think,
Exactly.
Is this real? Because I've been living a different life for the last 9 years since I quit a corporate job that, as you said, I've been able to help other people get into that position too. And the fact is that it is rarefied atmosphere, and not all business owners would do it. And I would say actually celebrate that. When you find that resistance or that push against doing it, know that is the edge that is holding your competitor back from crossing the line. So if you persevere past that, then you'll start to enjoy things that other people don't enjoy, and your life can be counterintuitive, and it can actually be successful.
I think you mentioned something there, which is it's the value of time that I'm really interested in talking about, which is where your strategy has always been for like your EHR, right? So that's a big term in your space, and I think that's what happens is that they get so concerned, especially because they're so squished, their time is so squished down. They think that if there's more stuff happening, that means they're going to have a lower EHR, and I'm talking about basically an hour, hour per rate estimate. But I think what ends up happening is that if you actually do it right, you're not losing out on like the time. You're actually gaining time, and that's the big question that I was going to have for you. In your book, you go through that quite a bit, and I think it's really cool how that works.
Well, it'd be like trying to if you wanted to hop on an airplane and fly to London tonight. You could try just going to the airport and buying a ticket and seeing if they'll let you on the plane without a passport, or you could just spend 30 minutes preparing at home, like go and get your passport, pack a bag, book a flight, and then call your Uber. Then it's going to run much easier through the rest of the process. You'll turn up, they'll take your passport, they'll give you your ticket, you'll walk onto the plane, you'll get off at the other end. So a little bit of prep work goes a long way when it comes to the setup. And I really challenge a business owner who says they're too busy. I mean, we're dealing with a finite measurement that every other person on the planet is dealing with. There's no special allowance. Like Mark Zuckerberg doesn't get 50 hours in a day. We all get 24. I would say the person responsible for you being so busy is you. And that's where I've given some tools and ideas on how you could change that with routines, with schedules, with eliminating activities that are completely useless from your agenda, and then asking people to help you with the things that you shouldn't be doing or you don't want to do, or that you're not even that good at. I mean, it's amazing how many high-level entrepreneurial types are still sitting at a desk going through their receipts with a shoebox to try and do their accounting, when there's more than enough talent out there, people who are happy to do that for a fairly low cost.
And perfectly timed with what I was going to ask you about next, which is looking at this sort of outsourcing your time. So again, let's go back to making people more happy, right? At the end of the day, we can make people more money, but are you happier, right? And I say if you can add more time into your life to do things you want to do, and we've even had some of the practitioners leave their practice because they're so successful, guess what? They've outsourced themselves, right? And so now there's someone who's taken on the role of running, and they can go do something else that they've always wanted to do. And I really want to talk about this, about outsourcing, stuff. Of course, it leads into us as being a help for these practitioners to give them the marketing sort of backup and become a marketing department for them. But for what you see in the outsourcing of activity, what do you think is the first step someone should think about doing when they think about this, sort of like becoming, again, less involved in every piece of the world that they're engaged in?
Well, the first step, I think, is document what it is that you're actually doing. That's the starting point. And it could be as simple as having a blank pad and writing down what you're doing. And then make a decision later, like a week later or a month later, well, which of these things do you keep doing that you'd rather not do anymore? And it could literally be as simple as, I don't want to load the dishwasher anymore, I don't want to cook anymore, or I don't want to mow the lawn anymore. Or it might be, I don't want to clean the windows in my office, I don't want to do the bookkeeping. And you progressively start to find other people to do the tasks that you just don't want to do anymore. And there'll also be tasks that, if you reflect upon or score in using the effective hourly rate measurement that I talk about, that are not actually worth doing. Some practitioners might have products or services that are not even profitable. Like you might be, say you have maybe you're opening on Saturdays for a half day and not many people come and you have to pay so much in overtime that it sort of balances out, and you could actually re-educate your customers to come, at 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning during a weekday instead, because they still have a job, for example. So I would challenge you to have a look at everything that you're doing and question it and see, is this still relevant? Do I want to do this? So most of my process is just documenting what I do and handing it to other people. And in your case in particular, there's no way that a high-level marketing person is going to be tooling around on their website or creating, editing or writing content beyond any level of getting it out into a dictaphone. And they should not be doing that stuff. And the next stage is they might think, oh, I'll just hire a marketing graduate. They're going to get a pimply young kid straight out of university who probably knows how to use Facebook and Instagram as a consumer, but like they don't have a chance competing to an old guy like you. Like you've been in the industry,
I got some gray hair.
Yeah, but you've got to be at least 20 years older than a university graduate, and you've been in the trenches. Yeah. So, I ran a service business for 7 or 8 years, serving customers like the businesses that you serve. And, we were at the leading edge of what was possible, and there was no competition for us when it came to people trying to do this in-house. So there are services that you should not try and bring into your own business, for sure, that you just go and see a specialist. And I would say, unless you're a very large company, they're going to be doing the same with their accounting, their legal, potentially design. These are functions that you go and see a specialist for. You don't try and do it in-house, and you definitely don't do it yourself.
So 2 more questions. And again, thank you for jumping on this podcast. I'm super excited to have you here. Again, every moment we get to spend together, I want to see if I can ask good questions so that our audience gets a good value out of this podcast. 3 things, right? So 3 things I think about. 3 things you can do for your business. One is to be relevant, right? One of the biggest challenges we face in this space is just be a real company with real good value and provide that to your patient base. The second thing I think is really looking at the segmentation and setting up your segments in your office that you're going after that make the most sense. Like you'd said before, a lot of these practitioners are way overdoing what they should be doing and should just be focusing on the things that core profit elements. And then focus, right? Focus on delivering simple processes to get those people through the patient journey. So anything you want to talk about that? Because that to me is like 1, 2, 3 is the first thing I talk to any practitioner about.
I would say put yourself in the patient's shoes, because that's the one thing that I've noticed, the difference between some medical organisations, and thankfully I'm not dealing with them very often as a consumer, but occasionally when I do, like if I go for a skin checkup or
Sure.
a dentist checkup, some of them have really good protocols,
Right.
and systems. So as a minimum, the goal is to identify, of all the products or services that you are offering, which ones are you really good at, that are very profitable for your business, that you have a reputation or some kind of distinction or you can stand out for. Focus on that and put the spotlight on that, and then help people from the first time they contact you,
Right.
which you have a big say in, by the way, to quickly find the right product or service, and then to step them through the journey from wherever they're at, from whether they don't even know they have a problem, and you have to attract them, right through to they know they have a problem and they know you're the solution. So you basically want to deal with the different types of customers that you could be searching to bring to your practice. So you can create the piece of content that you get asked all the time, like, is such and such right for me? Is a chiropractor right for me if I have a bad back? You can write these, or create these things that help people and instruct them. And a great thing to do is case studies, and to document things that have already happened, so customers can relate to that person and think, oh, I'm just like that, so I trust that these people can help me. But the really important stuff is to make it easy for people to contact you, and when they do contact you, make it easy for them to progress through your system, which means having a telephone script for your receptionist instead of just running with a lottery. Like, maybe they'll answer it well, maybe not. Give them the words that you would like them to say. Have a system that, despite the person operating it, will still follow up.
Yeah.
Uh,
And that's, by the way, thank you for saying that. That is one of the most critical elements that we try and say to people, is that you're only as good as the person who answers the phone, really, at the end of the day.
That's it. I know some marketing companies. I mean, I've got lots of customers who are in a similar sort of situation to you, and they won't work with a company to drive them traffic or do their marketing until and unless they do training with the reception staff, because that's where the pipe breaks. You could be the world's greatest marketing agency, and you send that lead to a phone that doesn't get answered, or gets a sloppy service, then you're just wasting money. And it's not long until the customer says, hey, like, turn it off. We're not getting conversions. But it really, nothing will beat a direct response sales of a human on the phone or face to face. But so anything you can do to create the best possible pathway is going to help that. So in my case, the way that I've dealt with this is on the very home page of my website at superfastbusiness.com. I ask people a few questions, and from their answers, it moves them to the part of my website that is relevant for them, and it takes all the other options off the table. So that helps with the focus, because there's less things to focus on. It's like, hey, we've found your solution. This is the next step.
Right.
And it's very prescriptive.
Yeah, and we try and administer that as well to a lot of the practitioners, with having a pain management or pain indicator tool in the front, so people can just get on with their day. And especially if you know anything about the U.S. culture, they're usually driving on their phone in the middle of the highway and using their thumb to make this decision while
I
they're
hope not.
looking at a black billboard or something, or whatever. So one last question, and then we'll wrap it up. And thank you again, James. I want to talk about the opposite. I want to talk about self-doubt. Now, we work with a lot of different personalities and a lot of really skilled people. I mean, like, these people are rock stars. They are literally like the top of the top. We've got some of the highest level spine surgeons in the country, running departments of spines. And we've got some of the best med spa people. At the end of the day, I always say, why? Let's get the podcast going. Let's get you should be doing a weekly video. Inevitably, it just turns into sort of FUD, right? It just disappears. And I really do think that people have self-doubt in their abilities and they really underestimate their capabilities. And I've been through this myself because I've had some experiences this year, which you're aware of, where I'm just blown away by if you just make a little bit of effort, how things tip the scales. And that if you get around that self-doubt, just it's amazing because the human capabilities and the ability to move things beyond your vision is just there. And can you just talk a little bit about that, and then we'll
Yeah,
follow up.
it's really interested me because it's mindset is really the compass that will guide you. Firstly, it's normal. We all have it, and I expect anything that's foreign to what it is that to get to the level you're talking about for some of your customers, they've probably been at university for like 12 years or something.
Correct.
A lot of study. They get into that click, and it's like a very strong train track. So you start talking about things that are out of their sphere of comfort, that's going to have some resistance. So I actually interviewed a mindset coach to a world champion surfer, and he gave me a great acronym. It's called NEAT, but he said it's normal. We should expect it, accept it, and then tidy up. So whenever you get a little obstacle, just say, hey, I was expecting this. This is part of the journey. It's a lot like a car that you buy from the car lot. It's going to come with factory settings, and the engine is not going to be revving as hard as it could rev because they'll limit it with the chip to make sure that it lasts a long time and doesn't give you any service trouble. But you can take it around the corner and have that chip reprogrammed, and the car is capable of a lot more performance than you realize as the owner. So that you take off some of that safety margin, and that's what we need to do. Like this part here, Professor Hewitt Gleason talks about our neck top computer. We can rewire it. It's totally able to be changed. So I would say build up confidence with small wins. Just start something. Take a risky step in a controlled environment and get the win, and then bank the win, and then take a bigger next step, and then a bigger next step. So if I were in your shoes trying to help someone to be a better version of themselves, I'd focus on helping them see where they're at now, seeing if there's a better version of themselves that they could imagine and would like to be, and then work out what the logical steps would be to move down that path. But just the first step, whatever that would be, just start with that. And it might be, in your case, as simple as just having someone in your team interview the expert and then take over, document it,
Yep.
transcribe it, clean it up, illustrate it, and turn that into perhaps a written post, and then start submitting that to the right places. And if that gets some traction and starts making a phone call, I imagine your expert might be more interested in doing the next thing. You might work them all the way up to a book and TV slot on Oprah or whatever. That'd be the ultimate, but I don't think they're going to start there.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for being with me today. James Schramko, get this book. Don't read it twice, like I did.
The double read.
Yes, and don't underline, because everything in here, there's no reason, because it's all underlined. The whole thing should just be underlined, because
you'll be using a lot of pen.
Yes, everything in here is important, so you don't have to underline. It's all good. So again, James, obviously I can do your outro for you. You can find James at superfastbusiness.com. He has probably about 500 and something podcasts now. They're all excellent. Lots of great guests. Everybody, who's who in the marketing industry. But most important, he's one of the guys that you're going to want to listen to over time, because his words of wisdom pick up throughout all of these people. He kind of picks it up as like putting your hand in a pot of honey. You just pull it out and it sticks to you. Like all these people you've spoken with, all these experts, that you just kind of like, it gets stuck to you, and you just keep repeating and mashing it into your own vernacular. So thank you again for coming, James. Any other things that you would like to say I didn't ask you, or should have asked you?
No, I just want to say thank you for being a member of my community and pushing the boundaries on what's possible for your clients. And if I help you and you help your clients, that's great leverage. and you're doing a terrific thing there. So keep powering.
All right. Thank you, James. Hey, if you'd like to have some help on your own journey, I do have coaching sessions available. For a limited few folks, I'm doing some coaching, and you can go to the page on the website customerbloom.com/apply. Again, it's customerbloom.com/apply, and I can help you with your own journey. A lot of the folks that I work with almost on an everyday basis are typical business owners just needing really some strategy, and more or less it's a process of figuring out what's broken and what's blocking you, and then taking you to the next level by giving you good strategy, good advice, things that I've learned along the road. And again, it's all about having a mutual respect for keeping each other on the path of our own goals, and making sure that, just like you see in these episodes, that you're going towards a number, you're looking at what you're trying to accomplish, and being held accountable. And accountability is really what coaching is about. So if you need some help, again, customerbloom.com/apply.